Welcome to Conversations from St. Norbert College, a program that encourages good discussion in our community on today's local and global issues. Now, your host for Conversations from St. Norbert College, author, professor, and nationally known sports economist, Dr. Kevin Quinn.
Welcome to Conversations from St. Norbert College. I'm Kevin Quinn. Our special guests are St. Norbert College President Tom Kunkel and Green Bay Packers President Mark Murphy. We'll discuss the May 2014 Sport and Society Conference hosted by St. Norbert and the Packers, and also issues involving the NFL. Mark Murphy, possessor of extensive experience in professional football and sports administration, is in his 6th year as the Packers President and CEO. He served a combined 16 years as Director of Athletics at Northwestern and Colgate Universities prior to joining the Packers. Murphy enjoyed an 8-year NFL playing career with the Washington Redskins, including the Super Bowl championship team of 1982. He is believed to be the first person to earn a Super Bowl ring as a player and as a team executive. Murphy serves on the NFL Management Council, Executive Committee, Competition Committee, and Health and Safety Committee. Tom Kunkel was named St. Norbert College's 7th president in 2008. An eminent journalist, Kunkel served for 8 years as Dean of the Philip Merrill College of Journalism at the University of Maryland before coming to St. Norbert. During his tenure, he has seen the dedication of the Mulva Library and the construction of a number of significant building projects on the college campus. Kunkel has presided over the introduction of a Master's of Liberal Studies graduate program, the adoption of a general education program that's new, and the inception of a sport and society conference jointly hosted by the Packers and St. Norbert. He's also a member of the Green Bay Packers Board of Trustees. Gentlemen, welcome back to the program, and thanks for being with us. Today is a very cold day, and so we are enjoying all that Green Bay has to offer. So I'd like to start off first by asking you about the conference. It's going to be in May 2014, jointly hosted by the Packers and St. Norbert. Tell us a little bit about where that came from and what's going on with that.
Well, maybe I'll start because the idea, actually, the genesis of the program originated with a former academic dean here, Mike Marsden, who thought for some time it would be wonderful to have this conference about sport and society. I mean, the idea being that sports plays such a predominant role in the American culture, and to dig into that a little bit. And he thought that because of this unique relationship with the Packers and St. Norbert College, and also because the Packers are a community-owned team, that we had a unique opportunity here to maybe do it in a way that might not, other teams might not, be interested in. So we approached Mark about this and the team several years ago, and they were very supportive. So we started one and waited 2 years, and 2 years ago we had the second one. And then we've just sort of thought about, every 2 years this feels like it's about the right pace. So this will be the third.
This is a chance to, number one, really help the community because it brings something to the community that we haven't had before. And then the other thing that really was important to us was the long-standing relationship that we have with St. Norbert College. Going back to Vince Lombardi, and I think 56 years now consecutively we've had training camp at St. Norbert. So partnership seemed like a great idea, and I think for us this is a chance to shed some light on really important issues. I think some people look at athletics and sports and say, well, it's just games, it's not really important, but these are really important societal issues, and for us to shed some light on it, I think not only is good for the community to know about these issues, but also from a national perspective has been a real positive.
I think it's also important to say that one of the reasons we're very appreciative to Mark, and one of the reasons we thought that the team might be open to this in the first place is precisely because Mark has spent so much time in a college university environment. So he not only is highly educated himself, but having spent time at these terrific institutions, he gets academics. He understands what this kind of discussion can bring to society. And I think we know a lot of teams wouldn't have been very interested in this kind of a partnership, but they were all about it, and we really appreciate that.
Well, this year's theme is a little different than the previous iterations of this. We're talking about women in sports. And I guess, Mark, I'd like to start with you. Obviously, the NFL has taken, and other major sports leagues has taken much more of an interest in connecting with their female fans. And I'm sure that's been a discussion at some pretty high levels. So if you'd share a little bit about why it is that that's important to cultivate those relationships.
Well, you always, you want to make sure that you're providing to your fans what they want. And for us, for the future, well, first of all, a high percentage of our fans are female. And so, obviously from a business standpoint, we want to make sure that, the game is popular and attractive to females. But, I'm really looking forward to this conference because, with my background as an athletic director, I really started as an athletic director right when Title IX was starting, and so having seen the beginning years of Title IX and to see where female and women in athletics is now, I think people look at it and say, well, they haven't made enough progress, they haven't achieved equality with men, but you think back of where they were in the 70s, they've come a long way. And it's going to be really interesting. Christine Brennan is an old friend.
She's one of the keynoters.
Oh yeah, she's Christine, and then Muffet McGraw. I think nobody knows her name. I think it's Ann McGraw. I think I read that, but really looking forward to hearing both of them speak. But Christine has done obviously a great job and gone on. But when I was at the end of my career with the Redskins, she was just starting with the Washington Post. And that was at a time where it was fairly controversial that women were allowed in the locker room, and so I'm sure she'll tell a lot of interesting stories about some of her early days back with the Post.
I go back further with Christine than that, actually, because I was at the Miami Herald in the early 80s when Christine, a very young Christine, I was very young myself, I will add, selfishly. She was the first sports reporter, female sports reporter the Miami Herald had ever had. So she's been a real groundbreaker herself in so many ways, and of course she really is, whether male or female, she's really one of the most accomplished sports journalists in America. But what she's done for women in sports and women in journalism is really remarkable, and she has firm opinions about things. I know that she's going to be terrific too.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. What I find interesting is that the popularity of women's sports clearly has increased dramatically since the early Title IX years, and especially women's individual sports have captured our attention. Ice skating, tennis, some other sports, but women's team sports have not enjoyed the same kind of success. I'm just curious about what your thoughts are about why that might be.
Well, I think you're right on in the individual sports. Real focus is around the Olympics, and whether it be gymnastics, figure skating, those have really taken off in popularity. In team sports, I think it's still sometimes habits are slow to change. I think people are used to watching men compete in some of those sports, but they have made progress. You have to give the NBA credit, that they've really made a huge investment in the WNBA. And I look again, I kind of go back to, as an athletic director and looking at, as I viewed Title IX, it was more about providing opportunities for women so that they could have all the positive, the experience that participating in athletics and the benefits that provides that male athletes had enjoyed for years. And I actually look at it this way, and this is sounds odd, working in a professional sports league, but I think women's athletics is much more pure because there are so few opportunities at the professional level that, from an athletic standpoint, they really do it more for the love of the game and for the benefits that you can get out of participating rather than trying to be a pro. And I know that it sounds a little odd, but I do think women's athletics, in terms of the benefits and how the female athletes use it to better themselves in their career after athletics, is really much more on point than on the men's side.
I think I agree with everything Mark said. I think it's important to remember that one of the reasons that we're taken with individual women is because they're the stories are so compelling. So whether it's the Olympics or Danica Patrick or someone that's really breaking through, if we focus on a story, we'll get engaged. At a team level, I just think you're still bucking a century or more of tradition in terms of organized sports in this country, and that is the slower process. But even there, you're starting to see some breakthrough. I mean, people can get wildly excited about the women in the World Cup soccer, for instance, and that kind of a thing. And I think as more and more of these women have come up playing sports and become mothers with daughters that are playing, that this is gradually going to happen. But this is why we're doing sports in society. This stuff is cultural and it's very ingrained, and sometimes it's hard to explain.
I would say real fans of, say, let's take a sport, basketball. When you watch really good women play basketball, their fundamentals are much better than probably any NBA team that you would watch, in terms of passing and shooting techniques, and the athletes in the NBA are so good that they don't have to have the fundamentals and the techniques. So I think some people and really coaches, for instance, or serious fans really appreciate the fundamentals and the teamwork that you just don't see at the highest level on the men's side the way you used to.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about our history together at St. Norbert and
Sure.
and this. And I guess I'll start with this. I found out when I was looking some things up that there were 19 St. Norbert College players that have been drafted by the Packers over the years, which was a larger number than I had expected. And the one who's best known is Larry Krause. He played for the Packers for 5 seasons. But the relationship is deeper than that, as is evidenced by, we have a stop on the Packers Heritage Trail right here. So I guess I'm sure that you folks in your tenure as presidents of the various organizations have run across some interesting stories here and there. So I guess, Tom, we'll start with you.
Well, for me, I think it does kind of go back to Lombardi. A lot of people think Lombardi actually started this relationship, but he didn't. His predecessor, by 1 year, started at St. Norbert. He promptly got fired.
He didn't win any. He didn't win 2 Super Bowls.
Some things don't change. Vince came in the second year, and of course he was the product of he had gone to Fordham. He had strong connections with the Jesuits. He loved the Norbertines right away, instantly, and Father Burke was our president then. Instantly extended this relationship, and it just solidified. And for me, one of the great things about this is that Lombardi was so present. I mean, you can still talk to some of the old timers around here, and especially some of the Norbertines, about serving mass every day, and Lombardi acting as the acolyte and that kind of a thing. And we know where he had offices, in which buildings, and where they did their film breakdown and things like that. And it's still that is still a very palpable presence on this campus. It's one of the reasons we wanted to do the marker and things like that. Is we did a book of oral history about the Lombardi years at St. Norbert College, because this is something, I think sometimes we maybe take these things for granted. You can't take these. This is an extraordinary, part of our history, and we feel so privileged, and we feel very privileged that the team recognizes that as well, and we continue to have this business, relationship, if you will, and it's just great, and it is special, and something that we don't want to take for granted.
Well, and it continues on in a number of different ways. Obviously we mentioned training camp. I think our players love staying in the dorms now. When you're a professional athlete, staying in dorms, you don't stay often, but you got everybody at St. Norbert does a great job, and so easy and so accessible to our facilities, and the training camp here is so unique, and obviously people across the state, plan their vacations around our training camp schedule. But the other areas that people may not know about, the cheerleaders. I mean, we've had St. Norbert, NUWGB cheerleaders for many years, and I think that's part of the aura of the Packers is, rather than having the glitzy cowboy cheerleaders, we've got college cheerleaders. I think it's very wholesome, and we really like it. And then the other connection is our chaplain, Father Jim Baraniak, who's obviously had a huge role over the years at St. Norbert College. Is just a great person, and really means a lot to our players and coaches, and has really did an outstanding job for us as our chaplain.
I think my favorite Packer story about St. Norbert is, and it also tells you how things have changed a little bit over the years. So the Packers, Lambeau Field is only about 7 miles from here. So even though they've slept here, they eat here, they've virtually always from the very earliest days would go to Lambeau to do their work, and they used to do it in just yellow school buses. And the guys would drive, and Ray Nitschke often drove. And
that's terrifying.
Well, here's what's really terrifying is that what they would do, Horning or someone would be behind him, or Jim Taylor, they'd cover his eyes while he was driving, and they would say, turn left, turn right, stop. So I'm not sure the team would let anybody drive anymore, and they might be a little more vigilant about how that.
Well, it's a way to develop trust in the teammates. The Packers were always thinking of what can we do to bond the players together.
Well, as a kid, I read Instant Replay by Jerry Kramer, who, by the way, I guess the year before he wrote Instant Replay, he actually escorted our homecoming queen to our homecoming and was part of the parade, and it was. But in his book, he talked about how Vince Lombardi somehow magically could figure out when Paul Hornig and a few other folks would sneak out of the dorm. And now that I'm on campus, I can figure it out, because where he was in Main Hall, and the window of his apartment and office overlooked the dorm. So he just had to be sitting there looking out the window, and he would catch these guys going out.
There's another great story on that subject. When Lombardi would make the rounds for curfew, one night Horning and his roommate Max McGee decided they were going to have a little fun. So they had pushed their beds together in the middle of the room and stripped naked, and when Coach poked his head in, they were there embracing each other. And he said, the heck with it. So,
in the 60s,
I think that doesn't happen anymore either. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've been asked, and I've seen it, is that the green and gold colors that St. Norbert has, did you lift them from the Packers? And my understanding is actually we've had those colors before, and it was Lombardi who changed to the green and gold colors. Is that correct?
I think it's definitely true that we had green and gold before the Packers did, because they used to be blue and gold.
We were blue and gold.
But what I don't know, and I've never heard described or explained, is whether that was just a coincidence, or there was he liked the colors that he saw here. So I don't know the answer to that.
Well, the pastor of the school I went to in Chicago was a big Packer fan, so my grammar school had green and gold colors. I had to wear a green and gold tie every day for 8 years.
Well, the original, the blue and gold, that was Curly Lambeau, who had gone to Notre Dame, loved their school colors, so he brought those back with him for the Packers. It's funny, I get every once a year we wear throwback jerseys, and for the last few years we've worn the blue Acme Packers blue and gold jerseys, and I get fans complaining, that's not the real Packers. And I said, well, no, actually, they used to be. But people are just so used to the green and gold that they can't imagine that there was a time when we were the blue and gold.
Mark, I'd like to talk a little bit about your own background, which is pretty unique in the world that you're in. You played at Colgate, right? And now, if I got my timing right, when Division I split into what is now called the Football Championship Division, the Football Bowl Division, that was right around the time you were there. Is that right, or maybe just before you were there?
It was after that. It was in the early 80s. Yeah, so they ended up splitting Division I into 1A at the time and 1AA. And Colgate, when I was there, it's hard to believe this. Our biggest rival was Rutgers, and we played them every year, always played them the last game of the year, and I think of my 4 years there, we were 2-2, and the last year, Rutgers was undefeated, ranked in the top 20, and we had only one loss, and so we ended up playing them in the Meadowlands, the old Meadowlands, on Thanksgiving evening on national TV. So, and now you think, where Colgate is, but when the NCAA made the decision to split, one of the criteria was the stadium size. And I think you had to have a stadium of like 30,000 to be in 1A, and Colgate had Andy Kerr Stadium was like 10 or 12,000, held 10 to 12,000. So Colgate ended up going 1AA, eventually joined the Patriot League, and Rutgers, of course, now is in the Big Ten. So it's things have changed, but Colgate played at a pretty high level then, and it would have during that period had a number of players that went on to play in the NFL. Marv Hubbard, Mark Van Egan, Kenny Gamble, a number of different players that had success in the NFL.
Well, now I know that if you come from a FCS team.
I was an athletic director, and I still can't remember what the different NCAA categories are.
Yeah, but I think some folks, I think it was the University of Chicago, did an analysis of the draft, and what they found out was that there were some really good players that get overlooked because of what we would call statistical discrimination. That they're blinded by the big school name, and they forget that sometimes the players that are on those teams look as good as they do because they are surrounded by other great players.
Sure.
And especially in the mid to later rounds, you find that some of the players from the quote-unquote smaller schools actually do quite well.
Yeah.
The draft has got to be very interesting.
Oh, the draft is, people talk about it, and it's unbelievable how big an event it's become. It's, now it's obviously in prime time, gets great ratings, but it's still, it's not an exact science, and teams make mistakes, in both ways. There are a lot of players that are labeled as can't miss that end up being busts. And then you miss on a lot of players, and sometimes it's like you said, there's a bias against smaller schools. And I agree with you. I mean, it's for all different reasons. Players mature at different levels. Sometimes a kid who's a superstar in high school levels out, and somebody who was a pretty good player in high school, but matures and grows and develops. Ends up being a great player, and with the Packers over the years, we've had a number of great players who weren't drafted. I think when we won the Super Bowl in 2010, we had 2 or 3 starters who were undrafted free agents that year.
Wow.
Sam Shields and Tramon Williams is another player for us that was undrafted and has played at a Pro Bowl level for a number of years.
To me, a colleague and I, Paul Bursick, who's on the faculty here, and we've kind of looked at this, it seems that if you invite the top 20 or 25 players to the combine, the physical differences between those guys aren't that great. And it's the other things, the intangibles, that maybe are going to be better predictors of how it is. But I know you guys put a lot of time into that.
It's hard to predict the intangibles. I mean, you look at. One of the things that and this is all done by Ted Thompson and his staff, but it's a fascinating process to follow and to see how it unfolds. But it's not an exact science, and you really try to look at it as the character of the people, and so for instance, some of the red flags that come up. There'll be some players that are extremely talented, but we'll look at it and say it's too big a risk.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. I mean, it's to really get into the soul of a person, and how driven are they? How passionate are they? Is football important to them? How important is success? And and another thing that we look at a lot is what kind of teammate are they? Are they the type that's really supportive of their teammates? Are they coachable? But there's a lot of different things. There's a lot of different vehicles that we use to try to evaluate, and at the end, it's still a crapshoot.
I think that's probably true. I mean, what you do is so much more public than what almost anybody else does. But I mean, my sense is that it's not that much different.
Well, I tell you, a huge factor in our game, but obviously also in evaluating college prospects is injuries. Last year. We all knew Eddie Lacy was a great player, but there was a real concern about he'd had a lot of injuries at Alabama, and would he be able withstand the punishment in the NFL. And for that reason, he dropped to us in the second round, late in the second round, and he ends up being the Rookie of the Year. And so, knock on wood, sometimes things work out for you.
Yeah, he answered that question. That's one thing we don't have to worry about when we hire faculty members is the injury factor. That's
Then we know they can tackle.
You've been to a faculty meeting, you know what that's like. So, Mark, when you were actually playing, you got your MBA. Is that right?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
So how did you pull that off? I mean, that's a pretty tough thing to do.
Well, I part of it was, I wasn't drafted, so I never came into the league thinking, I'm going to play 10 years, and so I always felt like I had to prove myself and had to make the team every year, but I also tried to take every off season to do something to help myself. And so my first year I worked as a bond salesman, and then decided to apply to business school and was accepted at American University. And it wasn't really that hard. They had there was more. You had more time off in the off season, so I would go full time in the spring. And it was right in Washington D.C., so it wasn't that hard. And then I would usually take one course in the summer and then one course in the fall. And the one thing I would say, my wife has been a saint. My wife Laurie has been a saint for a number of years. But we had young kids at the time, and so she just has been great over the years and was supportive of my efforts both through my working career and getting things like getting my degree. But it probably took me about 3.5, 4 years to get my degree. But I really, it was kind of nice to have a break from the football. Actually, one of our players, our punter, Tim Mastay, is working on his master's as well.
So did you ever have to go to one of your professors and say, I can't be in class because I have to play in the Super Bowl? Did that
I'm trying to think. I think I did miss my first week of classes with the Super Bowl in 1980. It was the 82 season, but fortunately they were pretty forgiving.
Yeah, it's not. I've heard a lot of excuses. That's not one I've heard, and more easily checked out.
It's funny when I was it kind of it's funny how life kind of takes funny twists, but. So I go through all that experience, and as a student athlete myself, and then biggest issue I deal with as an athletic director is missed classes and the emphasis on athletics, and so trying to find the right balance. I think it's really important, and that's the other thing I would say about St. Norbert and in terms of their athletic program. I just think they do a great job. I mean, obviously they compete at a high level in Division III, and I just really, the Division III level, for me, that's what athletics should be. It's more about the athlete and the benefits that he gets through the participation in athletics, and it's also about, but still, you talk to people at St. Norbert, they want to win. Their hockey program and basketball, but they have it in the right perspective.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, that's one of the things that you have to balance is the role of athletics here as much as the role of anything else. I'm guessing you get a lot more questions about, how the hockey team is doing than, what our English requirements are.
That's probably true. I have to say I'm surprised, even at Division III, which is non-scholarship, at the extent to which a president is dealing with athletic issues, whether it's, your coaching situations or your conference issues, or just a couple weeks ago I was in San Diego for the NCAA convention, and might I say that was a hard plane to get back on to come back. But it is really important. I think if we go back centuries in education, the development of mind, body, and spirit, have all been connected, and so the physical aspect of this is important. We think it's very integral to the experience. About 30% of our students play, varsity, intercollegiate sports, and another 20% or so play intramural and club. That's great, and it's also important, and it means that we have to put good programs out there because even though we're non-scholarship, we're recruiting against dozens and dozens of other schools, and kids still want to come to a place that's competitive.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. I want to say thanks to both of you. This was a wonderful experience for me. I really enjoyed it. And I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I have. Until next time, I'm Kevin Quinn. Best wishes for good conversations from St. Norbert College.